Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a question that honestly affects every single one of us. Where exactly is the line between healthy influence and harmful coercion? It's a line that shapes our relationships, our choices, and even our rights.
Think about it. We're all trying to persuade people every day, and we're being persuaded, too. It's just part of life. But when does that friendly advice, or even a passionate argument, cross over into something darker? When does it become about control and stop being about choice?
Well, it's interesting because the law draws a really sharp line in the sand here. On one side, you have totally legitimate influence, things like giving advice or trying to persuade someone, stuff that respects their ability to say no. But on the other side, you've got illegitimate pressure, and that's things like fraud, abusing someone's trust, or just straight-up threats. So to really get our heads around this, we're going to look at it through two really powerful and actually surprisingly similar frameworks, civil law and scripture. And we're going to start with the law. Okay, first up, the legal system. When a court gets involved in something like this, it all really boils down to one simple question. Was the person's consent real? The law has this specific concept for when a trusted relationship goes wrong. It's called undue influence. And this isn't just about being talked into something. This is when someone you trust, like a doctor or a lawyer, uses that position of power to basically override your own free will. And hey, this idea is not new. This quote is from a huge case way back in 1887. It was about a woman who joined a religious group and gave away all her property. The court called what happened to her spiritual tyranny, and it set this major precedent that the law can and will step in to protect people from being manipulated even when it's in a spiritual context. Over time, this has turned into a pretty clear three-step test for the courts. First, they ask, was there a relationship of trust? Second, was the transaction kind of weird, like not something you can easily explain? If the answer to both is yes, then something really interesting happens. The burden of proof flips. It's no longer on the victim to prove they were manipulated, it's on the other person to prove they didn't abuse that trust. Okay, next up is something a lot more blunt. It's called duress. This is when there's no subtlety at all. This is about direct threats, violence, intimidation. And the law is crystal clear on this. If you sign a contract with a gun to your head, that contract is worthless. Your consent was never real.
And the last major legal tool here is for fighting fraud. This is when your consent is basically stolen from you through lies. The law is super specific here. You have to prove that someone lied, they knew they were lying, they did it to trick you, and you are harmed because of it.
So, what's the big theme connecting all of this? It's that the law judges the action. The law doesn't get into whether a belief system is right or wrong, but it will absolutely step in when a belief leads to harmful conduct that takes away someone else's freedom. So the law is focused on behavior, on actions. Now, let's totally switch gears and see how Scripture looks at the exact same issue. And this is a fascinating shift because Scripture moves the focus from our outward actions to the inward condition of our heart. So just like the law goes after duress, Scripture points to an internal enemy, the spirit of fear. This passage frames fear not just as an emotion, but as a spiritual force that's the complete opposite of things like power, love, and clarity of mind. And it goes even deeper. The scriptural view is that fear is literally a type of spiritual prison. There's a phrase, fear hath torment, which suggests that just living in a state of fear is itself a form of suffering, something that cuts you off from truth and freedom. And hey, remember how the law punishes fraud? Well, Scripture warns against spiritual deception with some of the strongest language you can imagine. It uses phrases like seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. It sees false teaching not just as an error, but as a profound spiritual danger. The language here is just so specific and powerful. The word translated here as spoil didn't just mean to ruin something. Its original meaning was to be carried off as a prisoner of war. And that's the picture Scripture paints, that deception doesn't just mislead you, it robs you of your freedom. This table really just nails the difference, doesn't it? Take a word like extortion. For the law, it's a criminal act. For Scripture, it's a condition of the heart, a sin of greed. You've got the same word, but two totally different jurisdictions. One is civil and one is spiritual. So Scripture is always pointing inward. It's focused on the root causes, like fear or deception or greed. But here's what's so important. Even though the approaches are different, they both lead to the exact same conclusion. Abusing and exploiting people is wrong, period.
Okay, so we've got these two big frameworks on the table. Let's pull it all together now and talk about what this means for our own freedom, our own agency to make choices.
When you look at them side by side, you can see that even though they operate in different worlds, they're kind of working towards the same goal. The law protects our freedom out here in society by punishing bad behavior. Scripture tries to protect our freedom in here, in our spirit, by warning us about the things that lead to bondage. But both, at their core, are defending our right to make a genuine free choice.
And this famous verse really offers the ultimate weapon against coercion, right? If the tools of control are fear and lies, then Scripture says the antidote, the only thing that can really set you free, is truth.
And that brings us right to the bottom line, the place where both the law and Scripture completely agree. Freedom of belief, that's sacred. But the second a belief is used to justify behavior that harms or deceives or controls someone against their will, that's when a critical line gets crossed. That is the moment influence becomes coercion.
So we'll leave you with this question to think about, because recognizing that line is one thing, but actually navigating it in our own lives with our own families and communities, that's the real challenge. How do we protect our own right to choose while still respecting the beliefs of everyone else? Thanks for watching.